Hello and welcome to the Giving Voice to Depression podcast, brought to you by Recovery.com, the best place to find mental health and addiction treatment for anyone, anywhere.
Each week, we profile a guest who shares openly about their mental health journey. They share because they understand that when people don't talk about their depression or other mental health conditions, those of us who do struggle with them can feel like we're the only ones, that there's something wrong with us and that no one understands. We understand.
I'm Terry McGuire, the creator and co-host of this podcast. You have my promise that we'll keep it real here. Depression is real, and we're not going to sugarcoat our discussions about it.
Hope is also real, and you'll get a dose of that here too. I'm Carly McCullough, a licensed social worker and educator, and Terry's daughter. We've both experienced depression and also support loved ones struggling with it. We're here to normalize talking about depression and mental health in our communities, as well as our families.
And to share real-world tested strategies that have worked for other people who have walked similar paths. Thanks for joining us. Hello, Carly.
Hi, Mom. We're starting today's episode with a quick story called The Boy and the Starfish by American anthropologist and philosopher Lauren Isley. It goes like this. One day, a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking up things and gently tossing them into the ocean. Approaching the boy, the man asked, "What are you doing?" The boy replied, "I'm throwing starfish back into the ocean. The surf is up and the tide's going out. If I don't throw them back, they'll die."
Laughing to himself, the man said, "Son, don't you realize there are miles and miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't possibly make any difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it back into the ocean. Then, smiling at the man, he said, "Made a difference to that one."
We have no idea if that actually happened or not, but we do know that the story you're about to hear is real. And it makes the same point, that while none of us is likely to change the world by ourselves, we all have the capacity to change someone's world. This week's guest, Chloe, is a living example of that reality.
We first came across Chloe a few years back when she posted a picture of herself next to a big silver balloon in the shape of a 6. She wrote, in all caps, 6 years suicide attempt free, 6 years of kicking depression's butt. I've been alive 6 more years than I thought I ever would be, and life is so incredibly beautiful.
If you're in a dark place while listening today, we realize that can sound like glittery propaganda, but please stick with us and listen to Chloe's story so you can be reassured that it's not. Hope, even when it feels completely out of reach, is real. Here now is Chloe giving her voice to depression.
Chloe begins the story of her mental health journey in her preteens.
I think I remember struggling since the age of 11 years old. I remember having thoughts of suicide, thoughts of harming myself. I had low mood all the time, and I kind of thought that everyone my age was feeling the same way that I was. I thought that everyone was having the same thoughts, the same feelings.
And because she didn't know, and certainly wasn't taught or modeled better, she just thought that was normal.
So I never really spoke about it because I guess it was such a taboo subject for me growing up. You know, my family and I never really spoke about our emotions, our feelings. And I kind of spent all my time through high school just bottling up my emotions, my feelings. In some ways, I kind of feel like I was masking like the pain through just being so outgoing, so kind of a jokester almost. And again, I never spoke to anyone about the way I was feeling.
Chloe was not only outgoing and funny, she was also popular and a gifted athlete. From that young age, her dream was to earn a scholarship, leave the UK, and move to the United States to play soccer on scholarship. That plan created a lot of pressure on her. She vividly remembers her body's reaction to playing poorly in a game when she was just 16.
And I remember running to the locker rooms and punching a wall and just not being able to breathe. And I think that was the first time I'd ever had a panic attack before. And for me, I feel like it was all these bottled up emotions from the past 5 years had kind of come exploding out. And now all of a sudden, everyone around me kind of knew my reality because they'd seen me in that place. And I think that day was kind of a downward spiral for me.
It was also the day a pivotal player in Chloe's recovery would emerge.
My PE teacher, my sport teacher at the time, kind of stepped in and said that he was going to be there for me.
Remember that as you hear more of Chloe's story, because it gets a lot worse before it gets better. But it does get much better, and that teacher continues to play a role. So 4 months pass after her panic attack, and Chloe's downward spiral brings her to a place she'd never been.
Yeah, I remember feeling like there was literally no point in carrying on anymore and being alive when I was so unhappy. I remember literally thinking to myself, looking in the mirror and like not being able to recognize who I was. And I just said, like, what's the point in living when I'm not even enjoying being alive? I just wanted the pain to end. And I think that was the only thought that was going through my head. I mean, I wasn't thinking about my family, my friends. I was kind of just in this mindset that I just want the pain to end.
And did you believe that it would not ever end?
Yeah, I believed that it would never end. I believed that I was going to be in this emotional pain for the rest of my life. And it genuinely did feel that way. When I think of that time, literally, I remember seeing the world in complete grayscale. Like it was all black and white to me. And I never saw color in anything. Like the sky, the grass, like everything was just gray. And I was just so miserable. And yeah, I never ever thought that it was going to be colorful again.
With those beliefs, which she now knows were false, Chloe attempted suicide. She remembers her best friend running to help her, then paramedics, and an ambulance ride. She remembers unhelpful reactions at the hospital.
And I remember the nurse, and she'd obviously realized that, I tried taking my own life. And I remember she shook her head at me and she said, like, why would you do that to yourself? And why would you do it to your family? And then I remember my mum coming into the hospital and she just broke down into tears. And again, she was like, how could you do this to me? And I think like that reaction in itself like spoke volumes to me, because it just shows how little understanding at that time there was of mental illness and suicide. And all I really needed to hear was that it was going to be okay. My mum came the next day and she hugged me. Again, she cried. And that time round, she said that she was going to help me through it. And again, I think that's all I really needed to hear.
So before we transition, I guess, into the next part of your journey and your story, right here, if somebody's listening, I fear them thinking, yeah, that's how I feel. I'm going to do it too, or something, Mm-hmm. Can you give us a little reality check now that you are on the other side and you have a different perspective?
Yeah. I see the world in color again now, and I see it brighter than I ever did before. I love being alive, and I appreciate every single small thing and all the good things in my day-to-day life, and things that maybe I wouldn't have appreciated before I struggled. And even though it feels like it's never going to end, the darkest day always comes to an end. Like the storm always comes to an end, and the sun will always come out again. And it doesn't necessarily come out straight away. And sometimes it takes weeks or months, but it always comes out again. And I think that's the hope that you have to remember when you feel like there's just no point and everything feels so dark and so grey and so gloomy.
So between those two realities, what happened to shift from one to the other?
I'd come out of hospital, and again, I was still feeling like I didn't want to be alive. And then it got to a point at Christmas time of 2016, and I decided that, I was going to try and take my life again. And my sport teacher that I previously mentioned, he had noticed a change in my behavior. And he stepped in and he pulled me into a classroom and he said to me, I know exactly what you've got planned, and I'm not going to let you do it. I'm not going to let you try and take your life. You've got so much to live for. You've got so much to give to this world, and I'm not going to let you do it. And I think that one conversation saved my life, genuinely, because I didn't go through with it.
That same high school teacher noticed that Chloe just was not herself, and he stepped in. One single caring human, initiating one brave conversation. And in that, he not only changed her plans, but the trajectory of her life.
He had just realized that there was something that wasn't right. And I think when he pulled me into that classroom and we spoke, it just made me realize that people do care and people do want me in this world. And maybe what my brain was telling me wasn't necessarily all truth. And I think I realized there that my thoughts aren't necessarily facts. And he made me realize that. And to this day, I still speak to him. He still helps me. He still assists me where he can. He still supports me. And I truly would not be alive if it wasn't for him. He really, really did save my life. And I'm so thankful for him.
In that conversation, he also used the direct language that is proven to be most helpful, yet is often avoided because of discomfort. Instead of talking around the concern and asking indirectly something like, "You're not thinking of doing anything stupid, are you?" And honestly, who would answer yes to that question? He asked directly if she was thinking of killing herself.
It was so powerful for me because no one ever asked me before if I had thoughts of suicide or if I had thoughts of harming myself or if I had thoughts of taking my own life. And I think the reason that people didn't ask me that question was because they were scared of the answer themselves.
And it is a scary question. What do you do if someone says yes? Well, you love on them and listen to them and do not judge them. And you call in any help that you need helping them. One option is a hotline, like the new 988 in the US. You can call and say, "I'm with someone who just told me they're suicidal. I've never had this conversation before and I'm scared. Can you please help me help them?" That resource is available 24/7, 365 days a year. So please, do not let not knowing what to say or do stop you from saying or doing something. Chloe is living proof of how life-affirming and life-saving a caring conversation can be. After that one-on-one with her athletics teacher, Chloe's perspective somehow shifted. She was able to not only see her own situation and pain in a different way, but she was able to recognize the larger human condition.
Because I remember I sat down in my school and there was people all around me in my dining hall. And I looked around me and there were so many people who looked almost miserable. And I just remember thinking to myself that there are so many people in this room who are going through something right now that is unimaginable. And I have no idea about it. And the people around me have no idea about it either. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I need to do something to turn this around, not only for myself, but for the people around me who don't have a voice or who are too afraid to use their voice.
Chloe's turnaround involved a 220-mile walk across England to raise money for a mental health charity. Just as there are risk factors for suicide, there are also protective factors, and a sense of purpose and value is a powerful one.
I think part of the problem was that I didn't really feel like I had purpose before. And then all of a sudden I had a purpose and I had a reason to get up every morning and to do what I needed to do to help other people. And I think for me, it was all about helping just one other person. And hopefully I've done that. But that's where the transition period really started for me.
Chloe's transition continued with the realization of her childhood dream and goal. At age 18, she moved to the U.S. to study and play soccer on the scholarship she'd earned.
My life now. So I moved to America when I was 18. And I think at that point, I was still not in the best mindset. I kind of came to America searching for the love of life again. And I think I was still looking for the color in the world again. And I think that move to America was probably the biggest, most powerful and most incredible thing that I probably ever did for myself, because I think I met people that just completely changed my way of viewing life, and it gave me the opportunity to really understand what I went through, what I felt, the journey that I'd been on. And it gave me the opportunity to actually like have time with myself and self-reflect and train my brain. And yeah, it just gave me all of this time to truly understand who I was.
And the person Chloe is wants the person you are to believe in recovery and hope, and the possibility of your life changing and improving in ways that you are literally unable to imagine when you're in depression's pit.
And now I finished playing, actually. So I'm a coach, and I've never loved life as much as I do now. And if you'd asked me when I was 16 years old if I would be where I am right now, I probably would have laughed, like I wouldn't have believed it, because of the place that I was in. And I think that just shows that there is always hope. Even when you think there is none, and even when you think you can't get through the day, all you have to do is get through the day and survive the day, and then you can start again tomorrow.
And you're a coach now, which I find just fascinating. So are you tuned in to your players' mental health as well as their physical? Have you ever stepped in and said, hey?
Yeah, so I would say that my main role on the coaching staff right now is to be someone who's there for the players mentally and emotionally. And I deliver, I deliver leadership sessions, like kind of sports psychology. And I feel like the players know that if they need something, or they need to talk to someone, or they're struggling with their mental health, they know that I'm the person to come and speak to. And I think that's a huge thing, because, we've lost so many student athletes in the last year, or even 6 months, to mental illness and to suicide. And I want to make sure that those players, those girls, know that suicide is never the way out, and that they always have someone to talk to, and they always have someone who can support them through whatever they're going through.
That is a beautiful circle.
Yeah, it is. I never really realized that, but now you look at it, yeah, it is. It's a circle, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really lovely. It's like a healing circle. You are giving what you received, and it's inspirational.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Chloe, for sharing your story with us and for all of our listeners. It's so important that folks can hear what it is like from people who have really lived through it. And I think that circular dimension of it is really important, because I think when we're in a dark place, it feels endless and also linear. I'm thinking of like a timeline almost, where I can just sort of imagine that the future is going to be as dark as this present moment. And one of the things that some other more Indigenous, non-Western ways of thinking about progress look like are much more circular or spirals, that we sometimes have to visit the same place multiple times, but each time we're seeing it from a different vantage point. And I think Chloe's story and the role that she's now playing as an adult in young people's life is a different vantage point of those same feelings that she experienced when she was a teenager.
Absolutely. It's a great way to put it.
And sometimes we end up in the same place and we feel like, how did I end up here again? And it's hard for us to see that we're stronger. We have more awareness. We're more ready for what's next than we were the last time we visited the same place. So, Mom, I know you know this, but I have spent a really good part of the last 15 years in a lot of public elementary, middle, and high schools. And so one of the things that really strike me about Chloe's story is about how important her educators were in her journey, and
her coach.
Her coach. Yeah. And how, she's now in that same role for her students. And I think that this is a beautiful story in which it is really rooted in that it is our job to keep you safe.
We can say, I noticed changes. And we are always preaching, like, you don't need to know every single diagnostic symptom in order to know that something's up. You know something's different. And I asked her what he noticed. And it was 3 things. One was she was dressing differently. The second is that she was hanging out with different people. And the third is that she wasn't as involved with her sports as she had been. And they had been really pretty pivotal in her life. And the thought of saying something can be like, oh, I don't know, is this my business? Should I say anything? The answer is yes, you should say something. Most likely is that they're going to tell you they're fine. Worst case scenario is probably mind your own business.
It sounds a little different than that out of a middle or high schooler mouth. It tends to sound
Well,
like,
I'm sure it does.
something else.
I'm sure
but
it
yeah.
does. Something else, a little spicier. But the point is, we can take that. That is a consequence or a possibility that's well worth the risk. And even if they do say something harsh back, something inside of them knows you noticed, you're paying attention, you care, you found them worthy of checking in.
And it shouldn't just be teachers. There are so many people who work in schools who are not classroom educators, right? So it is the coaches, it is the specialty classes. Sometimes it's people who work in after school. Sometimes it's the school cafeteria folks. Sometimes it's the people in charge of the buses. Young people interact with a ton of adults in any given day. And it's really just important that one or more of those adults is sort of checking on them out of the corner of their eye. And so are we including these people in those conversations because they might notice things too?
And not just the adults, of course, it's everybody. I remember doing an interview with the school guidance counselor. She has told the kids, if you don't want to come to me, because it's not uncommon for someone to say, I'm thinking of doing something. And that something can be lots of things. Don't tell anyone, right? Well, how do you want to lose your friend?
Right.
By telling on them or not? And telling on them is such a childish phrase, but that's what came to mind. But she said, I will get notes slid under my door, which are literally a keep an eye on. And so it's not just the teachers. It's not just the adults. We all need to keep an eye on each other. And if you notice something up and you're not in a position because you're a friend and you're afraid to lose that friend or because you don't have the skill set, then you bring in somebody who does.
Yes. And one of the things that I will share, to that exact point is I've been lucky enough to work with some really amazing middle school and high school students this year. And when I ask them the question, what's something happening with kids these days that the adults might not know about? Their answer is, we are each other's emotional support right now, that we don't feel like y'all are prioritizing our mental health. We are having each other's backs. Like we are getting each other through the day. And I think there's something about that young people these days are connected in many ways, primarily through social media. And that also means that sometimes young people are indicating distress or depression on those apps in a way that we adults aren't monitoring. And it's not to say that we necessarily should, but there are definitely going to be some ways that young people might have a better chance of seeing a kid who is changing their online behavior, who is posting things that are darker than they're used to, right? So I'm thinking of sort of like the avatar is changing clothes, not necessarily the student who's in school. That those young people might be more aware or attuned to that type of those changes than we as adults are, in large part because we're not on TikTok as much as they are, or whatever that app happens to be at the time. But yes, we are going to need to work in intergenerational partnership in order to keep each other safe and well, because there's going to be stuff that happens outside of our purview, and there's going to be things that are going to require skills and strategies and support that are outside of the depth of young people. And we're going to need to work together to keep each other safe.
Amen.
At the end of this school year, I want to thank Chloe as an educator for the support that she's offering. As a coach, I want to thank all the folks who work in and around schools and young people for the support that they have offered young people. I want to thank young people for the emotional support they've been offering other young people this past school year. And I'm wishing everyone a smooth journey into summer breaks. We really hope that this discussion helps give some language or context to your own depression or ideas for how to support someone else in your life living with it. We invite you to check out the hundreds of episodes in our archive and to explore both the Resource Hub and treatment options on recovery.com. Depression is too dark a road to walk alone.
We'll be back next week.